Hi, everybody. Welcome to your float. My name is Caden Sinclair. I'm with Xanadu, and for clarity, for those of you that are excitedly joining this effort, give you a quick little rundown of how things are set up here. Idaho Power has sponsored and owns a float, grand float, for the 4th of July parade. You may have gathered that since you're volunteering for it. Xanadu's involvement is we are strictly a help organization. We're not hired to deliver or in any way employed to make the float. We're here to help you guys make sure that you deliver something. And we have the expertise and the volunteers and the shop and the tools and all that kind of stuff to make this work. So our involvement is pretty much there because our space, our community center believes in doing art projects, and this is an opportunity for our community to have something. Our community being your community too. There's people from Idaho Power that swing by, but so that's why we're doing it. People ask like, well, why are you insane enough to take this on if you're not being hired or, Xanadu being paid to do it? And it's because we really like having these types of things to do because they're super fun and they bring people together. And in the end, when you have something really amazing trundling down the road to look at, it brings, a lot of joy to kind of look at something like that and be proud of it. And you guys will be proud of it when you're done, as you should be. So for clarity, because Outdoor Event Group was generous. They did donate $3,000 to Xanadu for helping on this. So we did get a donation to Xanadu in order to help us. It was very generous. We are entirely funded pretty much by a couple of people, and so we don't really have a lot to work with. So that was a really nice offer, especially because it helped us with some of our metal shop build stuff to actually put towards the float. So very cool. So I just want complete transparency on what that means, how you guys are set up. Now, a budget did come with this float. So when Idaho Power sponsored the float, they did get a budget, and we are able to access that budget to put towards it. It's not huge. We're going to be working with some creative methods to ensure that budget goes as far as it needs to, but Idaho Power, Steve specifically, has been all over this right as soon as it got announced. And so he's been sourcing materials that you guys have. That's going to cut down a lot because we'll be able to work with some of the stuff, the salvage stuff that you guys brought over. And in addition to that, we have pretty good connections. We're working with Pacific Steel, who is a fantastic partner of ours and of yours. They've been very generous over the years in helping us. So we're going to cover today a little bit about the feasibility, the timeline, which is aggressive, because I know there's some panic and some people are like, how the hell are we going to build something like this quickly? So very reasonable question. So with that, let's kind of cover what we're looking at here. This was provided by one of your employees, Michael Alias. He sent this over, and it's in conjunction with some creative thought that went into what you guys wanted to bring forward. And the thought was a diorama with a hydroelectric power plant and just some neighborhood stuff, business stuff being supplied by power, and then sort of the in-between with the river. So you can see that here depicted. And what I'm going to do is, first of all, is this buildable by the 4th of July? Yeah, it is. I know it looks insane. There is a lot here, but I'm here to help. One of the things that I'm really good at is breaking these things down into their base components and what we can all tackle, assigning teams to those things, and then delivering the major components. Now, we can scope this so we deliver the biggest pieces of this so that if we do run into a time crunch, some of the more detailed, smaller stuff may not get on the float. But since this float is an ongoing float you guys will use for a number of things year after year, we can always build those in after the fact. So I just want to reassure everybody this is doable. Even with the budget, Idaho Power may kick in more if that's necessary. That's up to you guys. Again, you entirely own this float. And so it is your responsibility to deliver it. But I'm also not going to let you guys just, fail and be scared and sad because you didn't come forward to be able to do this because you weren't sure. So So let's break this down. If we're looking at the float, there are some things we're gonna talk about. We have an overhead view, so I want it to be clear. Rivers and streets and stuff like that aren't entirely visible from the side when you are looking at them as opposed to overhead, unless everyone is levitating at the parade or playing Quidditch. I don't think we're gonna have a lot of people looking down and seeing a street. So we got to get a little creative with what we got here, and there's some modifications to this design. I do need to consult with Michael when he gets back on some changes. To make sure he's good with those, but I think he will be, and it has to do with how things are clustered and just sort of visible from the side. It makes a little bit more sense. We have some really great perspective artists that instantly in their head looked at some of this and was like, hey, there's some changes that can work. So I'll describe what those are. So first of all, the way that we approach this is we break it down into its base components, right? We've got the entire float here, and by the way, this is a trailer. The front part of the trailer is where these businesses are. The rear of the trailer is where the little triangle is. So for a purpose of understanding how it's moving down the street, it's moving down the street with these houses and businesses first. So let's start there. The houses and the businesses. Now, first of all, I see the businesses and I see the houses, but those businesses are going to be tall. They're going to obscure views. So we think probably clustering the business in the very center, almost like a city in the very center, and then the houses kind of arrayed around those businesses makes a lot more sense. It's one of those things that I need to talk to Michael about. But as far as how they're going to look, like what are we going to do to build these? So the easiest and fastest thing that I thought for these was, first of all, we've got, if you look at the very bottom picture on the side here, we've got to build a little elevated platform. So that's not a big deal. We'll build a steel platform, put some plywood on it. It'll be slightly elevated. And then on the sides, we can just put some, theatrical landscaping so it looks like a hillside or an elevated cliff a little. And then with the actual structures, I'm going to have Pacific Steel cut out facades. So, for example, it'll just be flat, one-dimensional metal with houses and businesses cut out. Perspective-wise, I'm thinking probably the businesses will be about 5 feet tall, 5.5 maybe if we're stretching it. And we're going to go for a couple of them side by side, so you'll end up with a 4-foot wide span, 5 foot or a little taller for the businesses, and then we'll do those as a rectangle. So you'll have maybe 3 on one side and 2 on the other, and they'll be slightly different sizes. So probably picture that in your head. That allows us to just quickly cut those out of laser. We can then paint them so they look like they're actual structures. Same thing with the houses, which will be around 2.5 feet tall. And then we'll assemble them together and bolt them to the frame. They will be configurable, so if we want to rearrange them in some fashion, we can. But that'll give us a really easy, fast way, right? So already, Pacific Steel laser cuts these out. We bolt them to the frame, paint them, and we already have our cityscape. Now, I'm minimizing it a little bit because you got some power poles and some other stuff in there. But I want you guys to understand how I'm tackling this. So delegating that out to them, and then we have a team that's responsible for the aesthetics and how they get painted. Because they do have lighting effects, we're going to put just a light in the middle, probably a little bit of a cover so that the light doesn't bleed out. This is a daytime parade. Obviously, the 4th of July parades are usually during the day, so lights may not be readily apparent. We think we can get some effects with those with some pretty bright stuff, but there is a night component to this too. Depending on what you guys decide to do, I know these are getting pulled over to the park, so they can be a celebration in the evening. So there can be some night components, and that can really make some amazing LED lighting on this come to life. So I hate to think of Beetlejuice in the little town, but it is a pretty cool diorama. So I'm kind of thinking of this as a more life-size, giant diorama with the businesses being 5 feet tall, houses 2.5. It's pretty big. So let's move to the other side of the float. And I want to start not with the hydroelectric dam, but with all these people stands and this space. So I talked to Michael a little bit, we're going to do away with these people stands. And people stands are essentially, I call them Barbie stands. They're a pole that comes up and then a half circle, and it's so that you can stand with your waist into something so that when the float abruptly starts and stops, you got something to brace against. That's all those are. They're bolted to the frame. They're really sturdy. But there's no need for that many here when we could just do railing. So this rectangle, we could just do railing all the way around. The triangle, we do railing there. And that way people standing there can grab a hold of the rail if they need to, or, have their waist against it or whatever. That'll minimize the number of those that we have to build. It'll speed that along. And that puts us at a total of 5 if you look on the main structure here, one of which is already built. That's where we got the idea. It's actually already on the float. So we have 4 of these to build. That's pretty manageable. And again, I'm going to have, we actually got some really great material. Idaho Power, you guys have been all over it. Like, they dropped off some material, so that's going to cut down on what we need to spend on the budget. It's going to help us a lot. And then in this case, we're just going to get some material that's kind of pre-cut so we can quickly weld it together. So the people stand build part, for people that want to learn how to weld, work with metal, there's also some other poles on the side of the hydroelectric. All the metalworking out of the shop, we're going to do some cutting of pipe, and then you grind the edges of it so that it's a clean surface first of all, but also kind of down a little material. So when you weld things together, there's a little bit of a indentation, so the weld kind of fits in that space, makes it cleaner. So we'll be teaching you guys how to weld, those of you that want to work with metal. And again, some of that involves a lot of prep work. Most of the welding is prep. So, but that covers how the people stands and the railing is going to get built. It's going to be out of tube steel, and those components are going to be both welds, and also there's like sleeves that you can fit 2 pieces of metal into, and then a bolt to lock them together on either side. So we'll be doing some of that, because otherwise the pieces would be too heavy, especially the rail if it was all one piece. But again, breaking it down into its components, there'll be a team that's their job, right? They work just on that. So the hydroelectric dam itself, if you look at this picture up on the left, supplied again by your artist, Michael, we're going to aim for that being the structure. The water in this second picture is really what we were going after for the water effect. So I'll describe kind of how these two blend together, because there's also some rock formation effect. So on the dam, if you look at the perspective here, this rectangle, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to build out of some harvested, we got a whole bunch of metal. You guys brought some materials over. It's a lot, but fortunately it's all it would be really, really expensive, but it's all free because we were able to salvage. And we're going to build an upright, around 7 foot tall hydroelectric frame, right? And that's going to be the base for it. And it's going to be fairly tall because we want to go with a big perspective. I will tell you that the height restriction on the trailer is 10 feet for storage, but we can add some components up to 14 feet that can be disconnected. The firework poles, things like that. So that gives you a sense of height. The trailer is approximately 40 feet. With the tongue and stuff, it's like 50. So it's fairly long, about 10 to 12 feet wide. Sorry, spider hanging off my hat. I'm in my Xanadu. We have a lot of garden stuff, so we've got some really. You'll see when you get here. It's pretty great, but we do get bugs flying around. So, little side note. So we on that will then facade that with some quarter inch ply to build the actual wood components around it. So the walls you see on there, and then the top part is going to be wood, and then we'll treat that with a resin so it's super waterproof, because you guys are going to want this weatherproofed. And then the spillways we'll actually treat with, we'll build those out, but we'll probably put some vinyl material in there, and it'll give it a little bit more of a backing so that we can add the water flow, because that's going to be, it's going to need to cascade. And it'll probably come through the back and through so that it doesn't look like it's starting in the middle of the spillway. We want to make sure the illusion is kept. So that's how we're going to tackle that. So again, upright metal rectangular steel frame that's then bolted very securely to the trailer. We facade that with some wood, and essentially we end up with, without the water component, your hydroelectric dam. And I'm not sure if that is Oxbow. It's kind of what I had mentioned, but we'll just call it that. Now on the sides, you'll notice that there are some components for power. He put power poles on the sides. I think what we're going to do is, for that part, we're going to do the metal distribution towers. I think they look cooler. They're not going to be terribly tall because we're going to want them to look like they're in the distance, right, going up that hill. So, they might be as 2 feet tall down to maybe a foot tall, 2 feet, 18 inches a foot, 3 different sizes going up here. and then those will blend down into actual power poles as they enter the valley and then over to the city. So still on the dam. When we come out of the sides here, we're actually going to build metal poles that come up. You'll see here like the poles. So see how this shows the base of that starting up here. Well, there needs to be a pole going into the trailer. So each of these will have a pole that goes up, but in order for it to the illusion of the base of that being on something, we're going to do a theater rock formation, which is how this comes in. And that's pretty much like some metal rods and then some chicken wire over it, and then it's a sort of a paper mache-like process, but it's really weatherproof, coated in resin as well, and it's very solid. So you'll have these like rocky formations coming off the side of the dam with the distribution towers coming out, and we'll do some maybe some trees that are actually more miniaturized and on the rocks kind of going up, so it looks, like perspective, like they're actually in the distance. They're actually trees on the side. This is a fairly aggressive down climb because it's coming right off the dam, but we can make some little ledge stuff very quickly. I say quickly, but like it's a fairly steep and rapid cliff set, right? So we'll just make a couple of leveled off things, and those will be primarily for the purpose of both the firework poles and these distro towers. So that's your dam, right? And then we've got some water effect we got to deal with, and there's some materials we're going to use for that. It's kind of a streamer looking material with some blue LEDs. We're going to blend in some turbulence, probably some like cloud-like effect, just from when the force of the water hitting in, as it does in waterfalls and spillways. And that'll give you that whole effect on this whole side. So now we've got, what I'm trying to help you understand here is like, these are doable things. We got a team doing that. We got a team doing the rails, these people stands, and now, and the city. And now if you look at it, we've pretty much got most of the float built, because the center here isn't a whole lot of stuff. And we've already dealt with these people stands. Trees are going to be super easy. They're mostly just wood cutouts with some paint. We'll get some people that's their job. They'll just cut out trees and paint them. And I'm kind of hoping, a friend of mine is talking to the Lineman College and, maybe reaching out to some of the lineman group, actually Idaho Power, to build the poles. I'd love for the poles to get built to 3 different scales, so that when we put them throughout, they look like they're a little bit more distant and stuff, just give a little bit more perspective. But I want them to look accurate, as do I with the distribution towers. So I'm hoping the distribution towers and the poles that group builds, that's their one job, build those. Once those are done, I kind of thought it'd be cool to 3D print some transformers and some stuff to put on some of this stuff just to make it look, kind of more realistic and cool. That's a side thing, may not get done in time, but it just sort of adds some fun to it. And then we look at the river now. Again, streets and rivers, they look good when you're looking down on something, but not exactly visible from the side, and especially if you're kids and you're straining to see. So with the river, I think what we're going to do is we're going to take plexiglass at about 5 inches, and we're going to run it all the way down the trailer in the line of the river on both sides, and create an enclosed plexiglass space that we can put the same water material, so it looks like water is kind of going through, and a lot of blue LEDs to really shine through that. Plexiglass and twin wall polycarbonate pick up LEDs really well. They refract the light, so they can be very, very bright even in the day. But that'll give us a side view of a river. So it's not terribly difficult to cut a bunch of plexiglass and just sort of bolt it. We'll have to adhere it to the bottom so it's got a little bit of an L lip on things, but you can glue those things together, and then we can build a river that way. So that'll give you the river. And for the most part, at that point, you've got your float. And I think if you think about what we just went through, kind of stepped through, Pacific Steel cutting all those houses and businesses out and giving us facades, that makes that really fast. Also helping with the shape of the materials we're going to weld for the people stands, makes it super fast. And then really, we just have teams working on the power poles and the hydroelectric dam and some of the detail stuff and painting and things like that. And I think, given a month and a half, I think we're looking at a pretty good target. So I don't want people to panic given the time. And let's say we finish most of it. It's still going to look amazing. I mean, this whole setup is really cool. We do have some lighting effects. The power lines themselves are lit as they strand, so they're more visible. Otherwise, there's lines and they're not as visible, and it just gives it a little more heightened effect. Lighting inside the houses and the businesses, again, we'll just drop some lights in there. These fireworks that Michael listed out, they're, they look like they're in mid-explosion, pinpoint light. And those will be on poles that'll actually slip into a sleeve, and then we'll bolt them down. That way they can be taken out and removed. They are, there's not going to be a lot of power needs on this. If we do end up needing power, just people are curious, I just recommend a deep cycle battery bank. It's probably a really easy way to throw some power in there. Generator is going to be annoying and loud, kind of not necessary. So, yeah, and I think I'm skipping over the ag field there and the sprinkler. I don't know that we're going to get to that, but if we do, the way that we'll do that is also out of some metal for the sprinkler. I think some 3D components to look like sprinkler heads, for the farm, the large farm sprinkler heads for watering. I guess we could do downward facing because that's also a watering mechanism, but that's how I would go about doing that. As far as the fields of grain, he's got the ag field. Again, with side visibility, it's only going to be visible from that one side because the river is going to obscure that, and people, trees, things like that. So, if we end up doing that, again, with probably metal cutout, and then you can layer backwards a little bit. Like, you can have a couple of fields so they're slightly back. I mean, you're probably seeing theater production stuff where it's like that. So that's how I would go about doing that. I would make them upright and just cutouts, because you end up with stuff that's actual grain looking, and you're going to end up with all kinds of debris in there and just stuff collecting. It's going to be really hard to keep clean. It's going to break. So probably we'll do a facade on that too. And again, just rely on Pacific Steel to cut us out some shapes. And by, when I say that, it's, we draw what's called vector art. So that's one of the things that I can show you guys too, is I already bought, some of the, available vector art for buildings and houses. It's available online. So I'll adjust it and scale it accordingly. I'm going to use SketchUp Pro to do that. It's CAD program, works just as well. And then export that to a DXF or a DWG file, which is what's imported into their laser machines for the purpose of quickly cutting that stuff out. So I'll cover all that. Those of you that are interested in how that works, no problem. And then we'll have to do the lettering and the logoing and stuff like that as also an artistic component that gets added. We're going to need to add a piece that allows for that, because the side profile of the trailer is pretty thin. Yeah. And then you guys should, you could even vinyl print that whole banner. So, it's up to you guys. Hopefully that helps you guys. I wanted to do a video just because we are going to sit down. I'm going to be available, but I am going to be out of town a little bit. And it's going to make things a little scary, right? Just in terms of time. But Xanadu has some highly available, really great people. We are working on 3 different floats. So, people are stretched a little thin. We'd hope to have about 8 months to do these. And so 2.5 is pretty fun. So, we will have to manage our time very, very effectively. And people do work. I work full time, so I'm not, Xanadu's not my job. This is more of a hobby, and I'm here on the weekends. But it doesn't mean that there aren't hours after work and there aren't weekends. So like I said, once we teach some people to work on these things, I won't even be necessary. You guys will be you'll be trucking along on this stuff. I'll be around, of course, to help. But my goal is always to teach people to do stuff and hand them all the information so that you don't need to necessarily ask, and you've learned and can move forward on your own. All that said, I look forward to meeting everybody, and I also look really forward to seeing how happy you guys are going to be building a float. You're going to be pretty surprised by. The Simplot train is pretty cool too. So between you and the Simplot train, it's going to be pretty crazy. The Corey Barton one's going to be pretty a lot less strain on us because they're pouring in a ton of time and energy to build a lot of their own stuff. So I'm really grateful for that. We've got a few things on there I'm not sure how to do, like a golden retriever catching a frisbee, life size. Not sure how to make that. So we're gonna have some fun with these. You're more than welcome to take a look at all of them. They're all 3 parked at Xanadu, which is at 5015 West Bond Street, Fairview and Orchard, 83706. They're right out front, 24 hours a day. You can swing by and take a look. And over time, as we develop work parties, we'll probably have stuff you guys can stop by and do as you have time. So, we'll try to keep the even codes to the building. Like we're going to try to welcome you guys in as much as possible, so you have access to everything you need to succeed. That said, I'm going to get this 4-hour video done. And if you guys have questions, I look forward to hearing those as you guys bring them forward when we meet up. All right, that's pretty much it.